You're listening to Who's Tom and Dick, a weekly podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers, fighting stage 4 lung cancer, and Patrick Mortimer, living with heart disease. Why not grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy the chatter as we discuss and share information, talking about tough subjects, and offering help, support, and motivation with a positive mental attitude.
Well, welcome, Patrick. Nice to see you again.
Good afternoon, Martin. How the devil are you today?
I'm all right, and you're chomping down on a biscuit there, I can see, because we're in a tea garden, aren't we?
Yeah, it's very nice. October, and we're sitting outside.
I know. We've got a special guest, so shall I introduce him?
Yeah, you did the introduction,
okay, mate.
please.
So
Thank
today,
you.
I'm delighted to introduce someone who's endured something we all think should never happen to us, and it's the loss of a child. I'd like to introduce you to Trevor Bygate. Hi, Trevor.
Good afternoon,
Hello, guys.
Trev.
How are you doing?
Thank you very much.
Super. Thanks very much for coming on the podcast. And
I just realised I called you Trev there. I've got a friend called Trev, so I hope you don't mind.
You can call me anything you want.
Thank you very much.
My wife normally does.
yeah,
All right, okay.
we won't ask you what she says.
Yeah.
So, can you take us back then, Trev, right where your sort of career sort of first started? Because we know that you was in the army.
So I joined the army in 1998 when I was 20. So originally I wanted to be a professional footballer. And, I went to school and played a lot of football. And then I played like semi-professional up to the age of like 18.
Oh, you're fairly decent then.
Yeah, and then I had a 2-week trial at Newcastle United.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really young. It was hard. But it was great because I shared some of the changing rooms with, some of the old, like John Anderson professionals, and, Jim Smith was the manager at the time.
Yeah, well, he used to live in my village.
Yeah. So that was good. But, becoming a professional footballer is not easy. So I looked at life. I got married. I had children, and I thought, I've got to give them a future. So I thought, what better to way? Just walk into Bishop Auckland, go into the careers offices and sign the dotted line and tell my parents I'm off for a bit.
Did you actually literally do that? Go in and sign and wow.
Just walked in and just signed on.
No thinking about it.
No,
you just went in?
No, I just looked at the benefits of security, finance, home, housing, and a career for at least 22 years.
Yeah.
And then, what it teaches you, discipline and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah. So how did you progress? What did you progress to in the army?
The Army Air Corps is like a jack of all trades. So, you do a bit of your motor transport bit where you look after the vehicles. Then you're a ground crew where you move the aircraft in and out, and you put the, you put the rockets on the links and things like that. And then I drove a general for a couple of years because I had a serious knee injury playing football for the Army.
Yeah.
So it was just to get me away from the regimental life. So I went to Germany for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Then I come back and got involved with the Apache. Did all my training with that like really quickly because I was a corporal at the time. And then I ended up being an ammunition sergeant. So, you go to Afghan and you look after all of the guys, the training on the ground, and teach them how to load the missiles, the rockets, the 30mm in the gun and things like that. I was also a door gunner in a Lynx in Bosnia. So I sat on the side of a Lynx helicopter with a 7.62 machine gun and, was there if it was needed. So that was good fun. Big eye opener and experience because I hadn't been in that long. I was only an air trooper at the time, so they said we need a door gunner for Bosnia, and I put my hand up. Went for it.
Always went for a quick decision, Trev.
Yeah, you got to challenge yourself and just go for it.
So, what's the caliber of the ammunition in a Apache machine gun?
It's 30mm.
30mm, blimey.
And then you've got so you've got the rockets, like the Canadian rockets, and there's different variants. Flechette, which has got like 80 nickel tungsten darts in the end of it, and then you've got the missiles, Hellfire missiles, and you've got different variants of that as well. One's got a fragmentation sleeve, one's a thermal barrack, which can cause a lot of damage. And
I'm nodding as if I understand everything.
I'm just wondering whether we should.
Well, I've been out for 5 years. I've been out for 5 years now, and I'm surprised I still remember some of it.
Yeah.
Just wondering whether we're breaking the Official Secrets Act.
Well, I've got.
Well, they'll have to ban us from the podcast.
Yeah. No. It's, all of the stuff's open to like on social media and Google and things like that. You can find out specifications and stuff like that. So yeah,
So how long was you in 22?
20 years and 6 months.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to finish it, and obviously that was because of why I'm here a little bit. Is I was medically discharged for complex PTSD after the trauma in the Army Air Corps wasn't that much in a way, because we're not troops on the ground who go to the front line.
Yeah.
We're there to support the aircraft getting to the front line, to support troops on the ground, sort of thing. But, you still spend months away from your family. You still push yourself to the limits in training and exercise and stuff like that.
Because the funny thing is, you sign up because you said earlier, you get a house, you get security and all that, and then you go away.
Yeah. But, the benefits is the house is, you don't pay a lot.
No.
And you get certain benefits, free dental, free physio.
Oh, wow.
All that sort of stuff. So, it was good. And then, to spend so long in the army and then be medically discharged, it was difficult because, I was losing an identity. I lived in an army house, so I had to buy a house. I had to find a job. I was losing an identity. I was losing that wearing of the uniform, the camaraderie with my friends. Also, it's a life embedded into you. So it was a big move. And I think for the hardest thing for me is what we mentioned at the beginning, is that when I was serving, we were in a big exercise, because when we go to ops in Afghanistan, the Army Air Corps would go out to Arizona to do live firing with the Apache because of the ranges they've got out there. And I was out there for the second time. I'd already done one, gone to Afghan, come back. Then I was promoted to sergeant, so I did another one as an ammo sergeant. And the experience is great. And you're doing it for real in your live munitions you're putting on the aircraft. So there's a lot to think about, because you've got to put it in right. Obviously, when I was in America, we had a Lynx helicopter crash in Afghanistan on the 26th of April. So that was quite traumatic, because, there was 5 guys on the aircraft that died, and one of them was a close friend called James.
Wow.
So we'd lost him. And then, unfortunately, 4 days later, I had the terrible news that my daughter had taken her own life back in the UK. So, that was a huge, my end world has just ended. Yeah. In 4 days, and then topped off by my,
That's where we'll sort of take you next. You've obviously working in the army, and then you've had a phone call about your daughter. Yeah,
it was a coincidence, because I was FaceTiming my wife, because we would go and do the exercises out and about, and then we would come in. There was accommodation we were on a little American Air Force base called in Gila Bend, it was called, in Arizona, and that was with aircraft that go out and do the live firing, and it was an emergency landing if any of them had issues. So we had accommodation, and I was FaceTiming my wife at the time, just having a general chat, and the house phone rang, and it was ringing. She said, "I'll just leave it." I said, "No, get it. It could be anything." So she picked it up. And it was my mum and dad. It was my dad telling her what had happened, and she broke down and hung up on me, and I was panicking. And then at 10 minutes later, she come back on and she said, "It's Chloe. It's Chloe." I'm like, "What? Has she had an accident?" She went, "No, she's dead." And your life just goes drains out of you, drains out of you. So that instance, I hung up and I just ran out my room, and I ran to find the sergeant major at the time. It was difficult because I don't think he knew what to do, and it was quite a traumatic few hours there, because it's something that the military are probably not used to dealing with. So I get it that they might have not really thought of what to do, sort of thing. But I think it was hard because I was mentioned that I potentially got chaperoned on the flight back to give me support, because I didn't even have no clue where I was or what I was doing.
That must have been the worst journey of your life.
Worst 10 hours I'll ever live. And to be put on a civilian flight in the middle of families laughing and joking wasn't great. And then, I got collected from the airport. The welfare came and spoke to me for about 5 minutes, and then handed me over to a driver who took me to Haverfordwest, where Chloe lived at the time, because Chloe was my daughter to my first wife, so we'd separated and they'd moved to Haverfordwest. But I did see them a lot, as much as I could through summer holidays and stuff. And then when I got to Haverfordwest, the driver just dropped me off and left me at the side of the road. So that was hard because, my unit was my unit, and I'd committed a lot to the military for that length of time.
Yeah.
And I felt as though I didn't get back what I deserved. And it was hard. So I was off for like 3.5 months when she died. And then I eventually went back to work because I thought, I need to get back to work. I need to try and bring some normality back into my life. So I did. I went back into the flying squadron I was in. I went on active exercises in Otterburn. Trained guys. I was still training guys to do what they did. And, I was going through a trauma and I was grieving, but I had this mindset that I just needed to try and keep some normality. So keep doing what I was doing.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and it got to one point where I was seeing a psychologist for support, and then they have like a care plan every so often, and we went to Colchester Merville Barracks, and the padre came in, the welfare, and the psychologist, the psychiatrist, and my wife, and in the meeting, my wife got a little bit tearful, so we were going on an exercise in Germany, and the psychiatrist just turned around to me and said, "You're not going." He said, "You need to be at home and, go through what you go through and sit with your wife." Because my wife wasn't Chloe's mum, but she knew her for 13 years.
Yeah.
She was the one that took the call. She was the one that told me. She was the one that nobody went to see her from the unit.
Right.
Yeah.
No support.
For a long time. So it was hard. So, I was left to deal with everything. I went to the police, the coroner. I went to the funeral director, the hospital to see her in the chapel of rest. Then I came back to Suffolk a few days later after I'd sorted as much as I could out. Got my uniform and my medals, prepped for the funeral because I wanted to do her proud. So I wore all my kit, and then I made sure I did a speech and spoke about her there. It was difficult talking about it in front of 200 people with all her friends, to watch her being carried into the crematorium and the music. And, the music was Born Free to go in. The Doors on the way out, This Is the End. The speech I gave, I got to a bit where I was wobbling a little bit and the vicar just elbowed me and said, "Keep going, son, keep going." So it worked. And then eventually, we came home, and that's when I said I went back to work.
Was it ever the same though?
No,
I can't imagine it would be.
I loved my job. I loved the army. It was great for 15 years. I learned so much. The people were amazing, but they just weren't set up for that. And going through the loss of a child after suicide, the army wasn't the place to be.
No.
And the last 5 years, I battled the system. Because I couldn't go to Germany, I was moved from the flying squadron where I had all of the support around me. I went into an intelligence role into RHQ, but it was really isolated. The intelligence officer post was gapped, so I was on my own. I was grieving quite heavily at the time. It was an isolated job, so I deteriorated a little bit in the role. But I still had to go to Chicksons and do a 5-week intelligence officer's course, which was one of the most intense courses you'll do. The only way I coped is for every day of the course, I ran every night after each day to just tunnel vision, focus, and go for it. And I got through it. I failed the last test, the final test the first time, but then I got through it again in the end. And then I looked at some of the errors that units were making, and I thought, I don't want other soldiers to go through what I'm going through and to have that poor care. So I thought, how can I make a change internally within the army? So I thought, I'll transfer to the Army Welfare Service, and that's like a full-time job, and it's an 8-month course, and it's a joint course with the Navy. The RAF don't do it; they do something else. I'm not really sure at the minute, but and so I did. That was a difficult thing. I was transferring, but it was a long process.
Can all the forces tap into that, or is it just for the Navy?
Navy and Army.
Navy, Army. The Air Force can't tap into it then.
I'm not sure if they could, but they've not ever. It's always been it's a naval army course. So the first half of the course is an academic phase that's run at HMS Nelson for about 4.5 months, and then the second half of the course is you get posted to a unit somewhere and you do the job for real, where you are monitored and looked at how you deal with things, and you're taking people's issues on, marriage issues, financial issues, deaths, bereavements, the lot, and. Yeah, so I went on the course, but the build-up to the course was the hardest bit because I was in the intelligence role and I had another care plan at Watcham where they'd come to the unit and they decided that the intelligence role wasn't the best place for me. We'll move you and we'll support you transfer to the Army Welfare Service. But because the Army Welfare Service transfer took that long, it was 11 or 12 months. I still stayed in the same office where I was deteriorating, but my own determination just kept me going because I thought I'm going to be on this welfare course and I'm going to get to the position where I might be able to make change. And as I was waiting for the course, I signed up to some charity work for Child Bereavement UK. So I cycled from one side of the country to the other. Then I ran the Brighton Marathon.
Hold on a minute. You take that, I cycled from one end of the country to the other, as if you do it every day. That's fantastic.
Not length, width.
Yeah, that's fantastic, that is.
And then
start and finish was?
So Walkington on the west coast and Tynemouth Castle on the other coast.
Fantastic.
So,
how many miles?
It was only over 100 miles actually, but the terrain was really hilly because it was across the Pennines.
Yeah, but that's normal. Well, to say normal people, you're not extra, but people don't normally do things like that. So that's a fantastic achievement.
Chloe died in April, so I was on my bike in the September. Give me a focus, give me a direction. Some say it delayed my grief quite a bit because I was focusing on something else.
Really, yeah. So I thought your mind is occupied.
But the battle I had internally with my unit was delaying my grief a hell of a lot.
So obviously you're suffering from not only grief, it's depression?
So I was diagnosed originally with complex grief and adjustment disorder. So, it was hard to adjust to life of what you've gone through and without a child that was there.
Yeah.
So, but that's a diagnosis that you can still be in the army and hopefully get through. So, yeah, like I said, the process of getting into the welfare service took a long time, and that was the thing. They agreed that I was in the wrong place and they would move me, but because it took so long, I still stayed there for 12 months. But I did that. I went off and did the Brighton Marathon for Child Bereavement UK. Didn't realise I'd signed up for the London Marathon. It was 2 weeks later, so for the same charity. So I did that, and I raised a lot of money. So they had their 21st anniversary. So they awarded 21 people or organisations as one of their champions, and I was chosen as one of their champions. So that was nice to do that.
Yeah.
The London Marathon makes my race for life look...
You didn't do your race for life.
Well, I know I didn't. He did it for me.
Yeah. Well, I've done 3 London marathons now. 1 Barcelona marathon, a Brighton marathon, 5 Great North
That
runs.
must be fun, though, is it? Because you've got all those people dressed up in... I saw one year a diver, and it took us about 8 hours to get around.
Well, I've been overtaken by a rhinoceros, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a large bottle of beer.
But that is all the fun of it.
Speed you up when you see the beer in front of you.
As you get older and you've done more. So, the first London Marathon was about 4 hours 10, and I trained a bit. The second London Marathon, because I was still serving, and it was for the Royal British Legion. And I'll always say that the Royal British Legion are really special for what they did to me, because when I was in the darkest place, straight after Chloe died, they paid for a funeral. So the weight that took off me, they sent me and my family on poppy breaks. And they were always there for me, the welfare support. Well, Alan Brockbank, I'll always remember him because he came around my house and went through all of the applications for poppy holidays. Yeah, so there's a lot goes on. And, for them to do that was fantastic. So that was what I was saying. I did the London Marathon for them while I was serving, but I trained like hell. I was doing over 100 miles a month training. So I did knock my time down to like 3 hours 50. Which I was chuffed a bit with. Yeah. But then in 2022, I did it for Papyrus. I hardly did any training. It took me over about 5.5 hours. But the difference
was... With the beer bottle I overtook it?
Yeah. Well, the difference was I went slower. So I took in the sights and the scenery. Sometimes I walked with other people who were running for charities, and we chatted about why and how and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and then, You get to the final bit where it's home straight past Buckingham Palace, so I did run for the cameras probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just doing all of the fundraising.
All them people you were sort of friendly with at first, then you
Yeah.
went
I was talking to this guy and I said, right, I'm leaving you, see you later. No, I didn't really. We went together.
I believe you didn't.
Yeah. So, and then, eventually I came off the Army Welfare. So I went on the Army Welfare course. It was an 8-month course and I seen out 7.5 months of it and I withdrew in the final 2 weeks of the course. It was just internal reasons of like postings of where you were going to go when you'd finished it, because the family had been going through a hell of a lot of trauma. I had been through a lot of trauma. There was a possibility that Colchester was a posting. So when I'd finished the course, my family could stay where the support network was and I could work and stay at home. But I was told there was no option of Colchester to post, and I would have to move away or drag my family away, and I couldn't do that, so I withdrew. I spoke to the Colonel of the Army Welfare Service and I agreed that, I'm going to go back to Watcham, back to 3 Reg. So I did. I went back to 3 Regiment and I said, can I work in the welfare? Because I've done 7.5 months of an Army Welfare course. I've passed everything. I just didn't hand in the last 3,000 word essay and I didn't get the badge. And the welfare and the units have done a 9-day course. And they do a 45-minute presentation of loss and bereavement. That's it. So, but I was told, no, I couldn't go in. So I asked where I was going to go and they went, intelligence role. And I'm like, you're kidding, aren't you? That's where I was before I went away. So I wasn't happy. It flicked a switch in me. And then a week later, I found out one of the other students in the welfare course got Colchester after they told me it wasn't an option. So that even flicked a bigger switch in me. And I had a moment where I didn't say I was going to take my own life, but I just said I feel as though I don't want to be here anymore. So that was a case of the unit saying, there's a bed in a hospital in Peterborough, the Edith Cavell Hospital. Would you like it for my safety? And in my head, I'm like, well, I'm not at risk. I've gone through a lot of trauma and I've said one thing, but I'm not at risk. But what I had in my mindset was, once I'm in that hospital, that unit cannot touch me. They cannot let me down anymore. They cannot get to me. So I went in for 2 weeks. They took me off all the medication because I was on a lot of medication, and the doctor gave me metazapine, which made me feel really weird. Yeah. So I went in there and they took me off all the medication, just give me sleeping pills, monitored me. We had psychiatric appointments to talk and stuff like that. And I was in there for like 2 weeks. But the biggest thing for me was when I came off the welfare course, I was fully fit. I was active and my medical grade was fully fit. I came back fully fit to the unit. The 2 things that made me flick put me in. Ended up in hospital. When I came out of hospital, I never set foot back in the army again. So from being fully fit to a month later, gone. So it was a big shock. But what I've done since then and turned my life around. I left in 2019, and I proved so that my diagnosis changed from adjustment disorder and complex grief to complex PTSD. I always thought that's sort of, was it really? I'm not sure. Because, when you see a psychiatrist and he talks to you about complex PTSD and the symptoms and the struggles you have, well, I didn't have, I was anxious, I was worried, I was depressed, but that's normal if going through the traumatic loss. Sometimes you get irritable and angry. I was frustrated because of the treatment I wasn't receiving, so it made me frustrated and angry because it wasn't that hard to do. It was, let's change the unit's mindset and say, right, this is what he's been through, we need to help him. Some people will say they give me enough help, but it is what it is. I can't go back in time, and I'm hoping they've learned lessons.
So what year was this?
So Chloe died 2014. I was medically discharged in 2019. So it was that 5 years.
Yeah, so it's a little while. I'd like to think that people have, or the army have learnt from things like this.
Well, I'm doing a lot of work at the minute with the MOD because, you know, like I said, I'm out now, and this is when I question the grade of PTSD because I still achieved in the army. I still passed that whole welfare course other than withdrawn. I still passed an intelligence officer's course. Yeah. I ran 6 marathons, 3 Great North runs. So I was achieving.
Yeah.
And then when I come out, I got a job in the Border Force. I passed their course. I was looking after asylum claims and sex trafficking when they were coming into the UK. Then it was difficult because I was doing a 100-mile round trip to Stansted. So I got a job where I am now as a higher intelligence officer for a specific civil service company that I won't mention. And,
we know, don't we?
But straight away, I'm one of their national mental health advocates. I do presentations for the company, and it talks about mental health and well-being. You know, I encourage people to look at what. It's
good that they can see that there's a need for it.
I've been in 3 big companies now: the military, the Home Office, and the civil HMRC, who I work for. I'll say it now, but
yeah, we've led it out now.
and the civil service and HMRC, what they offer is better than the other 2 by far.
Mm-hmm.
The charity for civil servants is great, funded therapy, financial support, everything. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the military charities aren't on a level. They're on a level playing field or more but they're bespoke to the armed forces.
Yeah.
But there's loads internally. You get 24/7 support on phone, occupational health.
Yeah, so you come out in 2019 into what we know as Civvy Street. Really.
Civvy Street, yeah.
And you come out probably at the worst time because we're just about to go into lockdown.
Yeah, so I was Border Force at the time.
Right.
So I worked through the whole of lockdown at Stansted. It was a strange one, though, because it was like a ghost town because the airport was closed, but it was still open for cargo flights.
Right.
So instead of having 22 desks open, we'd have 1 desk.
Right.
And we'd rotate who would go on it. Sometimes people would be allowed to stay at home for shift.
Yeah.
And it was a nice break, actually, from having 16 to 17 cases a night and interviewing and stuff. But yeah, that was quite hard because, you know, the isolation of people being at home comes in as well.
Oh, well, at least you had some consistency because, I mean, I was coming from the angle that, you know, you come into Civvy Street and suddenly we're in lockdown. How do you actually... Yeah,
because that did put a lot of people in depression.
It did, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that you look at some of the students who were in university and they had to lock down in uni, in their accommodation. So that isolation for them, unfortunately, caused, the odd suicide in the UK. So, you know, you look at the bigger picture of what it caused and stuff. And I think maybe I just fell in lucky with the job I got, stayed active during COVID. So I was keeping that.
So going back to suicide, I remember when I was a kid growing up, I think sadly I only knew of one person who committed suicide. My son has got 3 mates who have committed suicide, and it seems there's more and more of it around now. Why do you think that is?
Well, we talk about the language around suicide. One of the big things I'll pick you up on this one.
Yeah, please do.
We try to encourage people not to use the word committed because it was a crime, and then 1961 it stopped being a crime. So we use died by suicide, or completed by suicide and that's just an educational thing to try and get people to not say committed because what it potentially does is carries the stigma with it. Because people all think, oh, it was a crime and we can't talk about it. So we try to encourage people to just use different language. That's one of the key things is the language and the terminology you use around the whole thing, sort of thing. But
so this is why people like yourself come on. You can teach us this. You know, we're probably all sing from the same hymn sheet. People my age.
Well, no, it's totally understandable that, you know, if it doesn't touch your life, if it didn't touch my life, I probably wouldn't be involved in what I'm involved in.
Yeah, my son thinks he's the unluckiest friend in the world, having 3 people.
Yeah,
you know, but and I just think it was never heard of when I was a child as much.
No, but I mean, it is now. It's a big thing. We look at stats. Are part of my presentation. So now I do a lot for suicide prevention. I'm a Papyrus champion, which is prevention of young suicide. I give presentations around the country for them, which to CAMS, NHS staff, police, colleges. I actually give one to over 100 army welfare officers and major military charities, that was my full life coming around in full circle, that I lost a child to suicide. I was medically discharged after the Army Welfare Service course. 10 years later, I was in Corsham in Bath, giving a presentation on suicide prevention to Army welfare officers.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So it was like
full circle, really.
full circle.
Yeah.
And I was chuffed to bits. So
Well, I was born in the 60s like Martin, going back a long way.
I wasn't far off.
No, I believe sort of in the 50s, 60s and 70s, mental health didn't exist. You know, we were always told to get on with things, you know, oh, don't be so miserable, get on with something,
Yeah,
you know. What's your perspective on mental health these days then? How's your experiences changed your view of mental health?
I'm honest to say that is something that never really crossed my mind. But like I said, when you've gone through something, actually, bloody hell, it's there.
Yeah.
But we've moved on a lot. You know, we look at mental health now, and it is recognisable. It is talked about a lot more.
Yeah.
We do need to do a lot more, you know, because you know, there is a stigma around it at times. It is an invisible illness, but it has to be as important as a physical illness, because they both come hand in hand. Physical health, if it's good, it can help your mental health, and vice versa.
Yeah, there's. I mean, last week we had a guy called Jeff on with alcoholism and that.
Yeah.
And people don't think of it as an illness, but it is, and obviously what we're talking about now, it is an illness.
Yeah.
You know, because you haven't got a sling on your arm or something like that, people think you're okay.
You can get to that point where you've got poor mental health, you turn to alcohol, and vice versa, you know. Alcohol will have an effect on your mental health. It's a depressant, so, you know, but like we said, we do talk about it a lot more. It is widely known now. There is a lot of training out there. The biggest thing is the education of people. You know, the education, the language used around it, the terminology, especially suicide prevention now. So, you know, I go off and I do all my talks for Papyrus, and it's all about terminology, training that's on offer, educating the schools, getting into the schools. And, you know, example, the local school here, I went in to see them, and I asked, how many mental health first aiders have you got in the school? And they said just the one. And how many assist trained people have you got in the school? So assist is applied suicide intervention skills training. It's a 2-day course. And they said, well, we haven't got any. And I asked, I said, how many children have you got in the school? And they went, 1,000. Yeah. And there's your issue.
Yeah.
That it's about being proactive and setting yourself up ready, not being reactive when one of the children has attempted.
What do you think social media is doing to mental health?
It's very powerful. You look at the whole pressure of social media on a young person, especially a young person, peer pressure, what they look like, you know, nasty things that can be said. You know, we spoke about it. I did a talk yesterday to a child death review team, and that was highlighted of the pressures of social media, grooming on social media as well. You know,
well, there's various sites where they encourage it to take your own life, don't they?
There is, and you know, there's a lot.
Not that I've seen them, but I've just heard about them.
Yeah, there's a lot trying to be done with social media. There's a charity, it's a really good charity called Ripple. It's a lady lost her partner, and it was something similar to do with social media. So they've developed something that goes onto the browser. So when someone types in a harmful word or something like that, it comes straight up with Samaritan's support numbers.
Okay.
So at that moment in time when someone's thinking of harming, you can flip their thought process. And it's something that Papyrus really work hard on. It's changing the mindset of the young person. The Papyrus now have a hope line, which is 24/7. That went 24/7 last year. That's huge. It's there for a young child who potentially is thinking of suicide, and it offers them the support.
So say it again, how that is? Is there a telephone number or
Papyrus Prevention of Young Suicide?
Yeah,
that is the hope line.
Yeah,
and it's available on web chat. It's available email. It's available text and phone. And the hope line number is 0800 068 4141. And that hope line is for a young person who's at a certain point. They can go through a safety plan with them. They can be traced, and the emergency services can be sent to do welfare checks at the time. It's also for parents and friends who are concerned about a young person, but it's also for professionals who have come across a young person who's disclosed something, and they can use it as a debriefing tool, which is great, a great option. Yeah. And it's just about investing in what you're trying to do. I've got a full-time job, 50, 60-hour week, but I dedicate half my time to presentations for pirates. I'm now a cruise bereavement support worker, so I'm currently seeing clients and taking them through 6 sessions of loss and bereavement because I'm using my own life experiences to support other people. And there was a Spider-Man movie once, and it said at the end of the movie, with great power comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. I look at lived experience as having that great power.
It's fantastic what you do. So with your mental health and all that, is this what qualified you for the Invictus Games? Or, I mean, perhaps you can tell us, first of all, because some people won't even know what the Invictus Games are. So if you can tell us what they are and how you qualify for it.
So the Invictus Games was brought in it was 10 years this year, actually. It was 10 year old. And it was sort of like developed through Prince Harry's sort of brainwave, and there was obviously other few people that helped come up with the idea and what it would do. And it was originally sort of designed for troops coming back from from conflict with who had lost limbs, so amputees. So a lot of the sports in the Invictus Games are developed for amputees. So you have sitting volleyball, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, indoor rowing, because it's a sitting down event, swimming. They do archery and they do a couple of others. But this year, because I was selected for this Invictus Games, now you have to have a medical reason to be able to select it. You can't just be a fully fit person and be selected. So I was selected because of my complex PTSD. And
well, I was just sitting here counting your limbs and thinking,
got to 4 and you couldn't get it.
Actually, you look at the team now, and there's a lot of psychological issues there.
So
people have had spinal injury, operations and surgery and stuff.
Now, are they? This is what I don't understand about the Invictus Game. So, a person who's lost an arm, would they swim against the person who's blind, or are there different? Because you get different.
There is different categories. Yeah. Have you seen the Paralympics? And they have different categories. It's similar.
Yeah.
But not the team sports. But things like sitting volleyball, you couldn't have a full team of able-bodied people. You have to have a specific amount of amputees in the team.
Yeah. Right. I'm with you.
But I can do wheelchair basketball. And it's really good fun.
Yeah.
But it's hard work because you're up and down the court and using your arms.
Wow.
And so
especially if you're not used to being in a wheelchair at first.
No. So yeah, it was developed 10 years ago. It had its 10-year anniversary this year. So we went to St. Paul's Cathedral where Prince Harry came and had a service for the 10-year anniversary. And the guy who was in Band of Brothers did the talk, I Am the Master of My Fate talk. Damian Lewis.
Yeah, I never watched the programme. But
and then it was, 10 years for the Invictus Games. It was 10 years since Chloe died, and the team manager rang me to tell me I was selected on Chloe's 30th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty crazy time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like...
And where are you heading to?
So we'd go into Canada, and the games is a hybrid game, so it's part standard sports and it's winter sports as well. So it's half of it's in Vancouver and the winter sports is in Whistler. And the Royal British Legion, what they do, you don't have to want for anything. They look after you, everything, the kit, hotels, the flights, family and friends are invited as well. So people are taking their wives, children, parents. You get allotted so many spaces. I'm taking my wife. I told her it's a second honeymoon.
On you.
Yeah. But my son and daughter can't come, unfortunately, because my son Bodhi's in university studying physiotherapy. So to miss 2 weeks, you can't be doing. And Tally's in college doing chemistry, biology and geography because she wants to be a dentist. Mm-hmm. So she needs to get some good grades to get that. So for her to take 2 weeks off that wouldn't be great for us.
So did you approach them or did they approach you about going into the Invictus Games?
So I went for it last year. So I went for the Dusseldorf Invictus Games. It was bit of a different process because you applied, went to the training camps. If you did well, you were selected for the games. I didn't get selected for Dusseldorf, but there was another opportunity. And so there was a thing called the American Air Force Trials to be selected for. And because I didn't get selected for Dusseldorf, they did say, oh, well, you know, if you want, we'd like to select you for the American Air Force Trials. And I'm like, what is that? And he said, it's 2.5 weeks in Las Vegas, competing against the American Air Force and the Georgians as well.
Yeah.
You know, staying in a hotel in Las Vegas, and a little bit of my head was saying, Dusseldorf, Las Vegas. So yeah, it was 2.5 weeks in Las Vegas. It was absolutely amazing. You know, we were on a place called Nellis Air Force Base, which is there like Top Gun, F-35s, A-10 Warthogs, you know, amazing facilities.
And what was you doing? What sport did you do?
I did sitting volleyball, shot put, discus, and what else did I do?
And can you reveal any results of it?
Well, I didn't win any medals. You should see some of the size of the Americans.
Yeah.
Geez, the guy that was doing the shot put, he was about, his legs were bigger than my waist.
Probably only call them up for the games.
Yeah.
So so the Victus Games developed this year, and it went into a hybrid games. The selection was a little bit different. You had to do 1 week at Battleback Centre in Lillyshaw, the recovery centre there, and that was a great week because you do mindfulness, you do stuff like that. And then there was 4 training camps. You had to do 2 at minimum, and then you were selected off the back of, you know, that. They don't just select you to say, I'm the best at this and I'm at best. It's about what if you're invested in your recovery. They want to see you after the Invictus Games. They want you to carry on your recovery. It's not about winning medals. It's about.
So was that? I mean, the Invictus Games is about being part of a team. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that the same with the American? Event you went to.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different because the Americans thing, we had 2 weeks to make a decision if we wanted to go or not, and then we were gone. Yeah. So I had to get permission off work and stuff. So we didn't get that time. We just got on a flight, went, competed, had fun, and then come back. The Invictus is a longer process. You know, you're selected. You've got 8 months together. You do a monthly training camp. You bond. You have family weekends where the family come and do things. So you do, you know, your family getting involved. You get to know each other really close. The staff are brilliant. You know, the team manager's great. The whole process is really easy to focus on. And then, like I said, the camaraderie ship. You know, you walk into a room and you're sitting with guys you've never met, and the banter's straight there.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be an Army, Air Force kind of thing, isn't it? That you've all served, and, you know, you must be in huts where, you know, you're all, or rooms, and then you just, like you say, you just bond.
Yeah, you do. You bond. You know, obviously the Army, RAF are different, and I think sometimes certain services can't take the banter as well as others.
Yeah.
I won't say it, but I'm in the Army, but, you know.
That must be like hangover on steroids. Yeah. All the forces in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Did you get into the Strip?
We did. They did take us out once to the Strip.
Yep.
And we had a day there. So I went to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant and bought my son a T-shirt because he likes to cook. But yeah, you know, the bonding and the camaraderie ship goes from competitors to the staff as well.
Yeah.
And some of the staff all of the staff are really great. You know, we have 2 guys from the Defence Medical Welfare Service who support us and look after us. You know, the coaches, some of them are coaches, are Paralympic coaches. Ben from the rowing, he's like a British champion and stuff. Ex-special forces.
When can we look for the Invictus Games, and what sports will you be doing in it?
So the Victus Games is the 6th to the 18th of February. So we fly out on the 6th, come back on the 18th. Get out there, bit of jet lag, and then you're into there's some practice sessions, opening ceremony. The stadium is a 56,000 all-seater stadium with a roof. And I've chosen to do sitting volleyball, indoor rowing, and biathlon. So the sitting volleyball I chose because it's a team event. You're doing it with potentially amputees, so you inspire each other. They inspire me because of what they're achieving. The indoor rowing is one of those things where it's for you, and you're focusing against you and the machine.
I was going to say, is it dry rowing?
Yeah, it's indoor rowing on the rowing machine. You do a 1 minute and a 4 minute.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's about when you get to a point where you think, I can't give any more, you give more. So you do the 1 minute, which is doable, and then you do the 4 minutes, which feels like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But you do have a sick bucket next to you sometimes
Really?
when you're doing it.
Yeah.
I've never been sick yet, but yeah.
So how do you feel you're coping now?
I'm in a really good place now. I've recently had a psychiatric review only 3 weeks ago, where the psychiatrist highlighted that I was showing no signs and symptoms of complex PTSD. But we did highlight that I'd just run the Great North Run, so the adrenaline was flowing. I was just about to give a talk to Army welfare officers, so that was positive. And I'm still on medication, so, the mood stabilizers, so they're keeping me on the straight and narrow. But we've just agreed yesterday with the GP that I'm going to start weaning off them because I want to prove that I am who I am because of who I am, not the medication.
Yeah, I can understand that. It was the same with my cancer tablets. I've weaned off half, I think.
Yeah, I don't have any flashbacks, the trauma. I've had EMDR therapy. I've had 18 sessions and it really processed.
What is that?
So it's EMDR is like a form of, so it's eye movement desensitization response therapy. It's a bit like CBT, but it's quicker and it processes your thoughts and feelings. And it helped me process the grief and the trauma and the anger towards the army, which delayed the grief. And now I put them away in separate filing cabinets. When I need them to lean on the life experiences, I can control them, but they don't control me.
Yeah.
And then I had another 6 sessions because the therapist said, you're doing so much. You're on a train that's going to run out of track. You need to learn how to step off on a platform now and then. So I took on she said, we'll do another 6 sessions to slow you down. So, because my mindset said when Chloe died, I wasn't in the country. I wasn't there for her. I was away a lot with the army. So my brain says I have to be there for everyone else. So that's why I do all the papyrus work, the cruise work, the presentations, the talks, the education. And I've learned in life now that you have to be brave and blunt to make changes and get things done.
Yeah.
And I try and live like that because, if you see something, act on it, because if you don't, you could potentially end up where I was.
Yeah.
And that's the power of it in a way.
So what's the future for you now?
Once I've finished I'm still working full time, so that's really good. I'm studying now. I'm studying counselling for children and adolescents, level 4, so I can do that for real. So that's something I look at. So, it's something I really enjoy.
On a final note, I was going to just ask you this. After all you've been through, mentally, physically, who or what inspires you now? I've put you on the spot.
Who's Tom and Dick podcast?
That's it. I always say that, Chloe was a brave girl. She had issues with her mental health and CAMS and stuff, but she fought and fought and fought. And when she died, she was only 6 stone and she took an overdose. So I always think it was a little bit of an accident. She was a cry for help, so she didn't really mean to do what she did. So for that strength and for her to do what she did, that inspires me.
Yeah.
For that bravery. But, I have other children who are great, who inspire me because they're working so hard. They're pushing on in life. My wife is great. Support. She's been with me for the whole 10 years of the trauma. What I've been through, she's stuck by me the whole way.
Yeah, you need that good base.
Absolute rock. I've put her through hell sometimes, and you know what? She's put up with everything, and we get on great. And my parents have been really supportive as well. They were the ones that drove all the way from the northeast to ID Chloe's body for me after when she died because I couldn't get there in time. And some of it is an internal thing. I'm quite proud of where I am now.
You should be.
What I've achieved.
Oh, God, yeah.
What I've been through, what I fought in the military internally, what I've achieved while I was still in there, what I've achieved afterwards, and the goals I've set myself now to make life better for others. That's all I'm focused on is making life better for others and saving young lives.
That's just what I was going to say. So lastly, what advice would you give to somebody listening to this who you never know what their thoughts are and might want to take their own life, and what advice would you give to these people now?
You look at a young child who is potentially at that point and, it's about encouraging them to talk. and reach out. It's telling them that they're loved. The world is a better place with them in it. You know, it's about, giving them you've got to give them the options. So like the Hope Line is an option. Like having people in the school who are trained and they know they're there is an option. If we don't have these things, the children don't have the option. And it's about us talking about it. So if we talk about it as care, support people or teachers or staff, then the children will think, they're talking about it, so I think I can. And it's that big question that if you turn to a young person and say, are you thinking of self-harming or taking your own life? That young person will think, wow, someone has noticed me, that I'm not great, and they're wanting to help. And you know what? I'm going to take that help because it's there now and I know it's there. And the burden of that pressure off a young person will just lift a bit. And the more rocks that you've got in your rucksack, every so often they'll take one out. And it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Well,
that's been a real eye-opener for me, hasn't it?
It has for me too.
And I just hope that nobody out there listening has to go through what you've gone through. But you're very inspiring to lots and lots of people. So I want to say thanks very much, Trev, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor, for being so open and honest about your experiences.
Definitely.
Yeah, it can't be easy.
No,
but what you're doing, from us' point of view, is inspirational.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why we do our podcast, to help other people. And I think, you've definitely done that today. So
yeah,
thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, just people remember the Hope Lines there from Papyrus.
Yeah, we're going to put it on
24/7.
We'll put a link on the website.
Yeah.
There's lots out there.
Brilliant.
Keep talking.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Trevor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. Cheers.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Who's Tom and Dick podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers and Patrick Mortimer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.